We need a conditional bailout. With the coronavirus likely causing a massive economic downturn, unless there is significant government intervention and bailouts, we can't have a repeat of what happened in 2008, where £500 billion of British public money was handed over to banks who then were not under any significant conditions to restructure their companies into a much more socially beneficial outfit. Millions of people in Britain live paycheck to paycheck. They work 9 to 5. They work the longest hours in Europe, over 42 hours a week average, I believe. There is no workplace democracy mechanisms in Britain other than very weak trade unions, of which I believe only 15 to 20% of workers are actually a member of a trade union organisation. And trade unions themselves in the modern world have a lot of criticisms, have a lot of completely legitimate criticisms levelled at them, in that for many they simply act as a support net in the event that you'd have to, use legal action or for a kind of dispute between an employer and an employee. They're not mobilising strikes to anywhere near the level that they used to, and they're not mobilising for greater workplace democracy, ironically, and encouraging workers to write to MPs and to influence employers to give employee ownership schemes, for instance. They're not doing that significantly. They're simply acting as a safety net in the event of a dispute between an employee and an employer. But that's not what a trade union should be about. But that's a completely different video. But basically, because we have essentially no significant workplace democracy in Britain, we have mass inequality. Workplace democracy, as I've mentioned in other videos and I'm going to mention in future videos, would mean that all workers would be part owners of the company. They would all be shareholders, and that would be by law, so you couldn't have a worker who wasn't also a shareholder. And they would also have voting rights. So there would be a general assembly that would allow them, with one work, based on the principle of one worker, one vote, to self-manage and control the policies and vote upon the conditions of their work, including salary. Because we don't have that, that is the overwhelming fundamental problem in why we have such grotesque inequality, which lies, of course, right at the heart of capitalism. Because we have such gross inequality, even though we're one of the richest countries in the world, is the reason why, the principal reason, why millions of workers work literally hand to mouth. They get paid and all of their salary is immediately took away in bills, student loan, food, rent, mortgage, etc. Petrol, all the costs of living in Britain are so high, and with 40 years of neoliberalism, for millions of low-paid workers, the cost of living is significantly outstripping wage increases. And so for millions, the cost of living with inflation, etc., will outstrip wage increases. So Britain is becoming more unequal and more expensive to live in, and wages are not rising. And the principal reason for that is a lack of workplace democracy and ownership. It's the most overwhelming problem within Western capitalism. And so because that persists, that structure within companies of having workers against owners or workers against shareholders, because that is allowed to exist, and as a left-wing socialist, I fundamentally don't agree with that system. I'm an anti-capitalist, and I believe that under the current system, there should be radical measures immediately to make all workers owners and to massively redistribute wealth in this country and to democratise all workplaces in a few months, which is what I would do if I ever was a part of a socialist government. But basically, because that persists, we have grotesque inequality in this country. And we don't have laws like Scandinavian countries, and I think some other countries in Europe, like Germany and France perhaps, that set maximum pay ratios, which again are legitimate social improving, morally right laws that address inequality somewhat. Because that doesn't exist in Britain, we have vast inequality. Inequality of income and inequality of power, where workers have little say over their